Clarissa Ward is CNN's chief international correspondent, and she's built a career out of being on the scene when historic moments occur. She covered the execution of Saddam Hussein, was embedded with the US military in Iraq, and covered the Taliban's retaking of Kabul. And her reporting is often very dramatic.
Closer.
Down.
Close.
Get down. Close. You're fine. You're okay. You're all right.
Okay.
That's the Iron Dome. Okay? That's the Iron Dome.
Yeah.
Fine.
Clarissa is on the ground right now. Clarissa, tell us what's happening.
Stand by.
Hi, John. So forgive me, I have a slightly unelegant position, but we have just had a massive barrage of rockets coming in here, not too far from us. So we have had to take shelter here.
Now, that video was actually subject to sort of conspiracy theories of its own, because someone was sharing on Twitter a version of it where they'd overdubbed on the audio someone telling her to get down for the sake of the news report. In fact, that was fake. There was no evidence that was fake, but it's very, very dramatic. It did seem like something from a movie. But even for a journalist who is no stranger to high-octane moments, last week Clarissa Ward was involved in something especially extraordinary, and that was even by her own account. So she tweeted, "In nearly 20 years as a journalist, this was one of the most extraordinary moments I have witnessed." And the report was this one, filmed at an empty prison beneath Syria's Air Force Intelligence Headquarters.
I can't tell though. It might just be a blanket, but it's the only cell that's locked. Is he gonna shoot it?
The guard makes us turn the camera off while he shoots the lock off the cell door. We go in to get a closer look. It's still not clear if there is something under the blanket. Oh, it moved. Is there someone there? I thought I saw it move. Is someone there? Or is it just a blanket? I don't know.
I think it's someone. Hello?
Okay, it's just
Yeah. It's okay. Hey, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Mafi. It's okay. Don't drag us. Journalist.
I'm a civilian, he says. I'm a civilian.
It's okay. It's okay. مين حطك هون؟ It's okay. It's okay. جابوني من حمص. جابوني من حمص.
He tells the fighter he's from the city of Homs and has been in the cell for 3 months.
Okay.
Okay, you're okay. You're okay. You're okay. You're okay.
Now, many people sort of on social media after that was shared pointed out that guy looked, fairly healthy for someone who's been in a torture prison for 3 months, right? Saying he hadn't seen any light, hadn't had any food or water. I mean, as the piece pointed out, he was the only prisoner left in a center that had been emptied out. So one prisoner who looks, relatively well for someone who's supposedly been locked alone in prison for months, might have raised some suspicions. None of it, though, did appear to raise suspicions with those CNN journalists.
Thank God you are safe. Don't be afraid, the fighter says. You are free. This is the third prison they brought me to, he says. The third prison. After 3 months in a windowless cell, he can finally see the sky.
انت حر روح جرو حد اعصابك
My God, the light, he says. Oh God, there is light. My God, there is light.
ولا طيران الحمد لله
Okay.
روق
Okay. You're okay. Stay with me. Stay with me. He repeats again and again. For 3 months, I didn't know anything about my family. I didn't hear anything about my children. The fighter hands him something to eat. He barely lift it to his mouth.
افتحها مجاهد حط الثاني صوت.
But his body can't handle it. Okay, you're okay.
So the CNN story is that they discovered the last prisoner in one of Assad's secret prisons, freeing an innocent victim of the regime before he succumbed to hunger alone in an otherwise empty prison. Now, quite an amazing moment, except it's beginning to look suspect if it didn't before. Verify Psi is a Syrian fact-checking organization set up in 2016. Its mission is to counter misinformation coming out of Syria. It's affiliated with the International Fact-Checking Network. They've now investigated Ward's discovery, and they say the veteran journalist may have been had. In the video, the prisoner identified himself as Adel Garbal from Homs. Verify Psi reports on that claim. The Verify Psi team searched public records for the name Adel Garbal to verify the circumstances and duration of his detention, but found no results. Garbal, who claimed to hail from Homs and whose dialect supported this claim, prompted further inquiries in the city. The team discovered that his real name is Salama Mohammed Salama, a revelation that brought shocking details to light. Here are some of those details. So they say Salama, known as Abu Hamza, is a first lieutenant in Syrian Air Force intelligence, notorious for his activities in Homs. Residents of the Al-Bayada neighborhood identified him as frequently stationed at a checkpoint in the area's western entrance, infamous for its abuses. Abu Hamza reportedly managed several security checkpoints in Homs and was involved in theft, extortion, and coercing residents into becoming informants. According to locals, his recent incarceration, lasting less than a month, was due to a dispute over profit sharing from extorted funds with a higher-ranking officer. This led to his detention in one of Damascus's cells, as per neighborhood sources. And the report goes on to reveal this. Despite his seemingly innocent and composed demeanor in the CNN report, Salama has a grim history. He participated in military operations on several fronts in Homs in 2014, killed civilians, and was responsible for detaining and torturing numerous young men in the city without cause or on fabricated charges. Many were targeted simply for refusing to pay bribes, rejecting cooperation, or even for arbitrary reasons like their appearance. These details were corroborated by families of victims and former detainees who spoke with Verify Psi. Now, that's pretty embarrassing for CNN and one of its most senior journalists if it turns out to be true. It would mean that either they participated in spreading misinformation or fell victim to it. And 2 days after Ward's video went out, meaning she'd had plenty of time to do some fact-checking, she was still standing by her story and posting this online. It shows the man from the video, potentially, we now know, an Assad regime officer with Red Crescent workers. And Ward writes, the man from our report reunited with a family member. CNN, though, is taking the accusations seriously. The network is now investigating the background of the prisoner freed in Ward's video and admits he may have given a false identity. And CNN has said this about the accusations. No one other than the CNN team was aware of our plans to visit the prison building featured in our report that day. The events transpired as they appear in our film. The decision to release the prisoner featured in our report was taken by the guard, a Syrian rebel. We reported the scene as it unfolded, including what the prisoner told us with clear attribution. We have subsequently been investigating his background and are aware that he may have given a false identity. We are continuing our reporting into this and the wider story. It is true that throughout the video, Ward's voiceover makes clear that she's just translating the man's words, just saying this is what he said. So in other words, she is technically reporting the scene as it unfolds. Of course, though, it's those accompanying images, Ward looking shocked, helping the man to walk out of the prison and keeping herself and her emotions permanently in shot, that really tells the story she wanted to tell. Ash, in a way, sort of when I first saw the video, my suspicion wasn't just that this man had given a false identity, but the whole thing looked a bit set up, right? It looked as if sort of if you're a rebel, you might want, you want to put forward that Assad was really brutal. You want to help basically these Western media figures get as dramatic a footage as possible. And to me, it seemed like they had probably a bit of a shared interest in, the Syrians maybe setting it up and CNN not colluding with them, but kind of not being as critical as they could be because they knew it would be great footage. What these fact checkers seem to have come up with is a slightly different story, that he actually was a prisoner, but he was a prisoner who had been on Assad's side and had done some terrible things. and had lied to CNN about his identity. What do you make of this whole row?
Michael, now, first, because this is an important journalistic practice, I need to say up top, I am not telepathic. I'm not telepathic. But I feel I could see inside this woman's head. All right. I could feel that Clarissa Ward, as she was expressing her shock, and she was saying, "You're okay." And she was, kind of centered, but sort of off center. And this man's incredible emotional reaction was on camera for all to see. She was in her head going, "Who is going to win the Oscar for playing me when they turn this into a movie? Is it going to be Kate Blanchett, or are we going to see Angelina Jolie make a return to Hollywood and playing that sort of, very resilient Westerner in the Middle East character that we know that she used to like to play in her heyday, back when she was adopting all them ethnic minority kids? That was the kind of role Angelina Jolie would play. I really did feel that from her, that she was like, wow, what a moment. And I think that this speaks to an important conversation about journalistic bias. When we talk about journalistic bias, often what we talk about is ideological bias. We talk about partisanship. And of course, that's important. Journalism is, always a means of a kind of propaganda, right? And it can be entirely factual, but the selection of facts or the pursuit of certain stories over others, there's always ideology there. I think that you can be fair and accurate in your handling of facts, but I don't think that journalists can be objective or impartial, no matter how hard they try. Right? That's what I think. They can work to mitigate those biases, but they can never really get rid of them. So normally we're talking about ideological biases. We're talking about political sympathies. We're talking about partisanship. But there is another kind of bias which is equally important, and that bias is, how much do I want this to be true because it advances my career, or it presents an image of myself as a certain kind of journalist. And I think that that's something which all journalists, including myself, are vulnerable to, because there's always ego at work, all right? Particularly when you do a job which involves your face being on camera, there is ego there, and you have to work against it. Now, what's interesting to me isn't so much that, Clarissa Ward, superstar journalist, may have had her work warped by ego in that kind of way. It's actually the way in which others, potentially, this guy here, are able to detect the sort of narcissism, egoism, messianic fantasies that journalists have and exploit it very, very quickly. That's something which is fascinating to me, that journalists are unaware of their vulnerability, their weakness, their ability to be exploited or manipulated, but others are not. And I think it does sort of fit with something that I know of journalists. And again, point a finger, there's three pointing back at you, right? My ego makes me vulnerable to manipulation as well. But something which I have seen from journalists is that they love things which make them look important and at the center of things. Now, sometimes this can be so minor that it's basically risible. I mean, I remember when Sajid Javid was, forced into resigning because of, certain power struggles of Dominic Cummings. When the news was breaking, he had Laura Koonsberg on the phone, and the BBC were filming her being on the phone going like, can we get confirmation of that? Because it made her look really busy and important. And I was like, at the end of the day, this woman's on the fucking phone. I mean, come on. Like, it's hardly war reporting. And then the BBC put that clip out. And then you had, I can't remember if it was Newscast or Brexit Cast or one of the casts kind of like commenting on it. I was just like, wow, this really is just a culture that's high on its own farts. But in a much bigger way, I think you saw that playing out, which is a journalist who wanted something to be true because it put her at the center of the story in a way which made her look heroic and brave and, like I said, like a little bit, of a savior. That meant that in those 2 days between the footage being shot and the footage being distributed, there is an active disincentive to do the fact checking. Because if the story that you discovered was, hang on, this guy was pretending to be someone he wasn't in order to manipulate my emotions, it's an incredible story, I think. Like, and I think on its own, it's a fascinating story, but it's one which cuts against you being an excellent journalist, and maybe makes you look, you know, I can't remember the word is gullible, right? It makes you look a bit gullible. So there's an active disincentive to do the due diligence and the fact checking work because it undermines the image of you, the journalist that you want to present in the story.
And I suppose she probably, when she was doing the voiceover, she probably knew that she was covering her back by saying, he said this, he said that, even though she knew that the power of the video come from her portraying it as this being a genuine interaction with a genuine person.